Right here. Watch it. You heard me? It's a bunch of stuff in here.
Gasoline.
That's a bag in there.
In a story and situation that has been developing for months now, the footage we are viewing is one of many acts of aggression against activists of the Defend the Atlanta Forest movement, protesting the construction of what is being called Cop City in a forest outside of Atlanta, a new training facility for law enforcement that would clear out around 80 or so acres of forest to construct. And as you may expect, law enforcement isn't taking kindly to the protests, sweeping the forest with weapons drawn and destroying anyone's property in their way. And after ransacking and literally destroying this one person's tent, which mind you may be this person's entire life depending on their situation, the police will commit another heinous act against a protester named Manuel Esteban Paez Terán.
Is this target practice?
The shots we just heard were fatal. That killed Manuel. Police are alleging he didn't comply with their requests, as well as firing the first shot at a Georgia state officer. Before they were shot 57 times, as revealed in an updated autopsy report months after the shooting took place that also concluded Manuel likely had his hands up surrendering when he was shot. And Defend the Atlanta Forest activists would fight back against the police's misconduct, and in Terán's memory, weeks following his death at the hands of law enforcement, ultimately leading to 23 protesters being charged with domestic terrorism. And over 30 activists involved were also detained. Despite the violent crackdown on protesters during this particular event, CNN reports that no officers were injured as a result of the protest, according to Atlanta Police Chief Darren Shirebaum. On-scene activists have also disputed the police's actions regarding the arrests, saying they targeted people indiscriminately while alleging that they made arrests at a family-friendly music festival near the construction site where most of the chaos broke out, with law enforcement claiming that the festival was a part of a cover-up for a coordinated attack on the construction site. And now there's even more highly questionable arrests happening.
Where a police SWAT team, guns drawn, raided the Atlanta Solidarity Fund on Wednesday and arrested 3 people who'd been raising money to bail out protesters opposed to the construction of a massive police training facility known as Cop City. Marlon Kautz, Adele McClain, and Savannah Patterson were charged with 1 count each of money laundering and charity fraud. Warrants allege the 3 were, quote, misleading contributors to fund the actions in part of Defend the Atlanta Forest, a group classified by the United States Department of Homeland Security as domestic violent extremists. As proof of money laundering, the warrants cite reimbursements from April 2021 to March of this year that total less than $7,000 and were for forest cleanup, totes, COVID rapid tests, media, and yard signs.
The Atlanta Solidarity Fund has worked as a bail fund in the area for years now to protect the citizens' First Amendment protesting rights, with these 3 organizers now facing charges of charity fraud and money laundering following the armed raid on their home. The organizers' attorney denounced the charges, voicing his concerns over the chump change on the arrest warrants for the organizers, especially given that the funds they are accused of laundering were used to build protest lawn signs, as even the bond judge wasn't moved by the prosecutor's case. Since December 2022, police and prosecutors have charged 42 protesters with domestic terrorism for their perceived involvement with the protests, which is currently being challenged in court as well as denounced by numerous human rights watch groups. And as we see far too often across the country, the entire Cop City project has wide bipartisan support, both from Republican Governor Brian Kemp, who labels the protesters as domestic terrorists despite none of them being convicted yet, and Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens, who describes the protesters as outside agitators, a term historically used to discredit protest movements, with all of this rhetoric being supported by strong corporate funding through the Atlanta Police Foundation. Even as politicians and police officials are trying to paint the property damage done as terroristic acts, therefore labeling the entire movement as a domestic terrorist movement, organizer and faith leader Reverend Matt Johnson makes the situation as clear as can be. We've tried everything. We went through city council. We've taken the legislative route. We've done tons of advocacy. We've sent in letters, and all we've been responded with is force. This just isn't people breaking stuff to be breaking stuff. This is people who have run out of all options.